You wake up, the alarm goes off at 6:30 a.m., and for a split second, you just stare at the ceiling. You're not tired exactly, but you feel heavy. You run the mental calculation you've run 1,000 times before. You go to work, you pay the bills, you maybe squeeze out a few $100s for savings if the car doesn't break down, and you do it all over again. It feels like you're running on a treadmill that's slowly speeding up. You're working harder than you were 3 years ago, but your bank account looks almost exactly the same. You look at wealthy people and you assume they must have hit the lottery, or they started a business that went viral, or they just got lucky with crypto. You feel like you're missing a piece of the puzzle, like everyone else was handed a manual for building wealth that got lost in the mail before it reached your house. But here's the thing. You actually have an asset sitting right in front of you that is worth $500,000. I'm not talking about your house. I'm not talking about an inheritance from a rich uncle you've never met. And I'm definitely not talking about some scratch-off ticket. This is an asset you own right now, today, even if you have $0 in your bank account and 6 figures of student debt. It is sitting there, dormant, collecting dust, losing value every single day you don't activate it. And the reason you feel broke is that you have been taught to focus entirely on the wrong side of the equation. You are obsessing over the $5 latte while ignoring the $500,000 engine in your garage. My name is Mr. Invests, and I spend way too much time thinking about maximizing human capital and asset allocation. If you're someone who feels like you're doing everything right, but can't seem to break through that financial glass ceiling, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Let's get real about why traditional financial advice is failing you. If you go on the internet right now and search for how to get rich, 90% of the advice is going to be about cutting expenses. They'll tell you to stop eating avocado toast, to cancel Netflix, to make your own laundry detergent, and to live like a monk until you're 65. And look, living below your means is important. You can't out-earn stupidity. But there is a mathematical limit to how much you can save. If you earn $50,000 a year, the absolute maximum you can save, if you live in a cardboard box and eat air, is $50,000. You cannot save more than you earn. There is a floor. But there is no ceiling on how much you can earn. And this brings us to the $500,000 asset. Economists call it your human capital. It is the present value of all your future earnings. But that sounds boring and academic, so let's call it what it really is, your skill stack. Most people treat their income like a fixed number, like a salary is something that just happens to them. They think, I make $22 an hour, and they accept that as a law of physics, like gravity. But your income is actually a reflection of the value you bring to the marketplace, and that value is entirely within your control to manipulate. Here's what most people don't realize. A single skill learned over the course of 6 months can be worth more than a lifetime of frugality. Let's run the math, because the numbers are actually shocking when you see them laid out. Let's say you are incredibly disciplined. You clip coupons, you never eat out, you drive a beater car, and you manage to save an extra $500 a month. That is $6,000 a year. Over 40 years, assuming you invest that money and get a decent 7% return, that extreme frugality turns into about $1.2 million. That's great. That's a comfortable retirement. Now, compare that to someone who ignores the coupons and instead focuses on the invisible asset. Let's say this person spends their evenings learning a high-leverage skill. Maybe it's data analysis. Maybe it's digital marketing. Maybe it's specialized sales negotiation. They don't save an extra penny. In fact, they spend money on courses and books. But because of that skill, they negotiate a $10,000 raise this year. Just $10,000. That's not a life-changing amount of money in 1 year. It's an extra $833 a month before taxes. But watch what happens. That $10,000 raise becomes the new baseline for every raise they get for the rest of their career. If they invest that extra income over the same 40 years, that single salary bump without any extra lifestyle sacrifice grows to over $2 million. One single skill acquisition beat a lifetime of extreme penny pinching by almost double, and that is assuming they only get one raise. In reality, skills compound. You learn one thing, it opens a door to another opportunity, which teaches you another skill, which leads to a promotion, which leads to a consulting gig. The curve isn't linear, it's exponential. So why doesn't everyone do this? Why do we spend hours hunting for a discount code to save $4 on a pair of sneakers, but we won't spend 30 minutes reading a book that could increase our salary by 20%? It comes down to a psychological flaw called cognitive ease. Saving money is concrete. It's immediate. If I don't buy the coffee, I see the $5 in my hand right now. My brain gets a little hit of certainty. I did a good job. I saved money. Increasing your earning power, on the other hand, is abstract. It's delayed. If I spend an hour studying Python code or learning public speaking, I don't see a deposit in my bank account tonight. I don't see it next week. I might not even see it next month. The reward is invisible in the short term, so our brains dismiss it. We are wired to prioritize immediate, visible feedback over long-term invisible growth. We are biologically programmed to be bad at this. You have to understand that the economy does not pay you for how hard you work. This is the hardest pill to swallow for most people. We grow up with this puritanical idea that if you sweat and struggle and grind, you deserve money. But the market is cold and indifferent. It pays you for the difficulty of the problems you solve and the scarcity of the people who can solve them. A janitor works incredibly hard, physically harder than a hedge fund manager. But the market pays the hedge fund manager more because there are fewer people who can allocate billions of dollars of capital effectively than there are people who can clean floors. It's not fair, it's not moral, it's just supply and demand. To unlock this $500,000 asset, you have to stop thinking like a laborer who gets paid for time and start thinking like a business that gets paid for value. You are the CEO of You Inc. Your skills are your product line. Your resume is your marketing brochure. Your interview is your sales pitch. If your business isn't making enough revenue, you don't just try to cut costs on paper clips. You try to improve the product so you can charge more. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Mr. Invest, that sounds great in theory, but I don't have time to go back to college. I have kids, I have a job, I'm tired. And that is a valid objection. But here is the secret that the education system doesn't want you to know. The most valuable skills in the modern economy do not require a degree. They require specific, tactical knowledge that you can often learn for free or very cheaply if you know where to look. We are living in an era where the gatekeepers have been removed. You don't need permission to learn. You don't need a professor to certify you. You just need the ability to demonstrate that you can do the thing. But before you rush off to learn random skills, there is a trap you need to avoid. Not all skills are created equal. I see people spending years learning things that have zero market value. They get really good at things that are fun or easy or artistic in a way that doesn't scale. And look, hobbies are great. You should have hobbies, but don't confuse a hobby with an asset. If you want to unlock the $500,000, you need to be strategic. You need to identify what I call asymmetric skills. These are skills that require a relatively small amount of time to learn, but provide a massive, disproportionate return on investment for the rest of your life. Let's break down exactly what an asymmetric skill looks like. This is where the magic happens. An asymmetric skill is something that acts as a force multiplier for everything else you do. It's the difference between addition and multiplication in your career equation. The most famous example comes from Warren Buffett. Now, Buffett is a numbers guy. He spends his life analyzing balance sheets, but he has a certificate hanging in his office, not his degree from Columbia University, but a diploma from a Dale Carnegie public speaking course. He has said, on record, that learning to communicate effectively can increase your net worth by 50%. Think about that math for a second. If you make $100,000 over your lifetime, just being able to speak clearly and confidently could turn that into $150,000. If you make $2 million, that skill is worth an extra $1 million. Why? Because in the modern economy, the person who does the work is rarely the person who captures the most value. The person who captures the value is the one who can explain the work, sell the work, and convince others that the work matters. You can be the most brilliant coder in the basement, but if you can't look a manager in the eye and articulate why your code solves a business problem, you will always be paid a fraction of your worth. You will be managed by someone who is less technical than you but better at communication, and that will frustrate you for your entire career. This brings us to the second asymmetric skill: persuasion. And I can already hear some of you groaning. Mr. Invest, I'm not a salesperson. I don't want to trick people into buying used cars. Look, you have to delete that definition of sales from your brain. Daniel Pink wrote a book called To Sell is Human, and he found that something like 40% of time in non-sales jobs is spent moving others. If you're a teacher, you're selling education to bored students. If you're a parent, you're selling the idea of eating broccoli to a toddler. If you're asking for a raise, you are selling yourself. Here's a specific math example of how the persuasion multiplier works. Let's say you are a graphic designer. You charge $50 an hour. You are very good at design. You spend 100 hours learning advanced 3D rendering. Maybe you can now charge $60 an hour because you're slightly more technical. That's a 20% increase. Now, imagine instead of the 3D rendering, you spend those 100 hours learning negotiation and value-based pricing. The next time a client comes to you, you don't say, "I cost $50 an hour." You say, "I see that this project is going to help you launch a $100,000 product. My design will ensure that launch is successful. The project fee is $5,000. You might do that work in 20 hours. That is $250 an hour. You just 5x'd your income, not by getting better at moving pixels, but by getting better at moving people. That is the power of an asymmetric skill. It detaches your income from your time. But if the math is so obvious, why is this so rare? Why do most people stay in their lane, doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a 3% cost of living adjustment? It's not laziness. It's something psychologists call identity rigidity. We tell ourselves stories about who we are, and then we defend those stories as if our lives depend on them. You hear people say things like, "Oh, I'm just not a numbers person," or "I'm an introvert, I can't do public speaking," or "I'm a creative, I don't do business strategy." These are not facts. These are labels you glue to your own forehead, and every time you repeat them, you are reinforcing a neural pathway that keeps you broke. When you say, "I'm not good with money," you are giving your brain permission to zone out when the financial report comes up at work. You are engaging in a self-fulfilling prophecy. The wealthy understand that identity is fluid. You are not a creative or a numbers person. You are a learning machine that can upload whatever software is required to solve the problem in front of you. The moment you stop defending your limitations is the moment your skill stack starts to grow. And this is where it gets really interesting. The real money isn't in being the best in the world at one thing. It's in being pretty good at two things that rarely go together. Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, calls this talent stacking. If you are just a good writer, you're competing with millions of other writers. It's a grind. If you are just a financial analyst, you're competing with a million other analysts. But if you are a financial analyst who is also a great writer, now you are rare. Now you are the person who writes the newsletter for the investment bank. Now you are the person who goes on CNBC to explain the market. The supply of you just dropped to near zero, which means the demand and the price for your services skyrockets. Think about your own industry right now. What are the two skills that almost nobody combines? Is it a nurse who understands software development? Hello, health tech consultant. Is it a construction worker who understands social media marketing? Hello, viral home renovation channel. Is it an accountant who understands psychology? Hello, CFO. The money is in the intersection. The money is in the overlap. And the beauty is, you don't have to be in the top 1% of either skill. You just need to be in the top 25% of both. Top 25% is achievable. Top 1% is a lottery. The math favors the hybrid. So we've established that your skills are the asset. We've established that combining skills is the multiplier. But now we run into the biggest practical wall, the I don't have time wall, or even worse, the I started and quit wall. We have all been there. You get motivated at 2 a.m., you buy the course, you buy the guitar, you buy the coding book, you do it for 3 days, it gets hard, you feel stupid, you quit. And now you have a guitar collecting dust in the corner, mocking you. This cycle of start, stop, shame destroys your confidence. It reinforces the idea that you can't change. But the problem isn't your discipline. The problem is your expectation of the learning curve. There's a famous concept called the 10,000-hour rule, popularized by Malcolm Gladwell. It says you need 10,000 hours to become a master at something. That's 5 years of full-time work. That number is terrifying. When you hear 10,000 hours, your brain says, nope, too hard, pass the remote. But here is what most people don't realize. The 10,000-hour rule is for becoming world-class. It's for playing the violin at Carnegie Hall. It is not for becoming competent. Author Josh Kaufman research shows that the time it takes to go from knowing nothing to being pretty good isn't 10,000 hours. It's about 20 hours. 20 hours. That is 45 minutes a day for a month. That's it. In 20 hours of focused practice, you can learn enough Python to automate your spreadsheets. In 20 hours, you can learn enough copywriting to rewrite your landing page. In 20 hours, you can learn the basics of contract law so you stop getting screwed by clients. The barrier isn't time. The barrier is the frustration barrier. The first 5 hours of learning anything new are painful. You feel incompetent. You feel dumb. Your ego hates it. Most people quit in those first 5 hours. If you can just push through that tiny window of suck, you break through to the side where you start seeing results. You have to be willing to be bad at it for a little while so you can be rich at it later. You have to trade your short-term ego for your long-term bank account. So how do we actually execute this? How do we take this abstract idea of human capital and turn it into a concrete plan that puts cash in your pocket? Because if you just turn off this video and say, cool, I should learn stuff, you will do absolutely nothing. You need a system. You need to treat your life like a venture capital firm. A VC firm doesn't just throw money at random ideas. They have a thesis. They have a strategy. They measure ROI. You need to become the venture capitalist of your own time. You have 168 hours in a week. That is your capital. How are you allocating it? Most people allocate 40 hours to low-leverage work, their job, 56 hours to sleep, and 72 hours to maintenance and entertainment. They're investing 0% of their capital into R&D, research and development. Imagine a tech company that spent $0 on R&D. They would go bankrupt in 5 years. That is what is happening to your career. You're relying on old technology, the degree you got 10 years ago, and wondering why the market isn't valuing you highly. We are going to fix your R&D budget right now, and we're going to do it using a framework I call the 10% rule. It's simple, it's mathematical, and it's unbreakable. You are going to take 10% of your non-working, non-sleeping time, and you are going to reinvest it into your invisible asset. Let's do the math. If you sleep 8 hours and work 8 hours, you have roughly 70 hours of free time per week. 10% of that is 7 hours, 1 hour a day. That's it. You don't need to quit your job. You don't need to abandon your family. You just need to reallocate 1 hour a day from consumption to creation, from watching other people live their lives on a screen to building your own life. But here is the critical part. You cannot just try to find the time. You have to schedule it like a meeting with the IRS. If you don't schedule it, Parkinson's law takes over. Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill the time available for its completion. If you give yourself all evening to clean the kitchen and watch TV, you will take all evening. But if you know you have a hard stop at 8 p.m. because you have a skill appointment, you will get the dishes done faster. You will become more efficient with the mundane stuff so you can invest in the valuable stuff. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Mr. Invests, I'm tired. After work, my brain is fried. I get it. Decision fatigue is real. That is why you do not do this at the end of the day. You do it first. This is called pay yourself first, but apply to time instead of money. If you wait until 9 p.m. to learn that new skill, you will have zero willpower left. You will fail. You have to steal that hour from the morning, or do it on your lunch break, or do it immediately when you get home before you sit on the couch. The moment your butt hits that cushion, it's game over. Momentum dies on the sofa. So what exactly should you learn? I'm going to give you 3 specific tiers of skills to focus on depending on where you are in your journey. This is your curriculum. Tier 1, the hard market skill. This is the technical thing that gets you paid. If you're in marketing, learn SQL so you can query your own data. If you're in sales, learn the basics of contract law. If you're an admin, learn advanced AI prompting to automate your emails. Go to job boards, look at the jobs that pay $20,000 more than you make now, and look at the required skills section. Write them down. That is your shopping list. Pick the one that shows up the most and learn it. Tier 2, the soft leverage skill. These are the multipliers we talked about. Public speaking, business writing, negotiation, or leadership. Pick one. Join a Toastmasters club. Read Never Split the Difference. Take a course on persuasive writing. These skills don't expire. Python might be replaced by a new language in 5 years, but the ability to convince people will be valuable in 2050. Tier 3, the financial meta skill. This is the skill of managing the money once you make it. Understanding taxes, understanding asset allocation, understanding how debt works. Most people make the money and then lose it because they skipped Tier 3. They upgrade their lifestyle before they upgrade their portfolio. You need to learn the language of money so you don't get taken advantage of by the system. Now, imagine doing this for just 1 year. Just one. 365 hours of focused learning. That is enough to become top 10% in almost any specific niche. While your friends are arguing about politics on Facebook, you are building your asset. While your coworkers are complaining about the boss, you are building the skills to become the boss or to quit and start your own thing. Fast forward 5 years, the compounding effect kicks in. The person who invested in their invisible asset is now earning double what the saver is earning. Their network is stronger, their confidence is higher, they have options. True wealth is not just a number in a bank account. True wealth is the ability to say no to things you don't want to do because you know you have the skills to make money elsewhere. It's freedom. This brings us back to that $500,000 number. It wasn't clickbait. If you are 30 years old and you increase your earning potential by just $20,000 a year, which is absolutely doable with the strategy we just discussed, over the next 30 years, that is $600,000 in extra capital. And if you invest that capital, it's millions. You are walking around with a winning lottery ticket in your pocket, but you haven't scratched it off yet because you're too busy worrying about the price of eggs. Stop playing defense. You cannot shrink your way to greatness. You cannot budget your way to millions if your income is stagnant. You have to play offense. You have to attack the income side of the equation with the same intensity that the FIRE movement attacks the expense side. The most dangerous risk isn't investing in the stock market. It isn't starting a business. The most dangerous risk is spending the next 40 years of your life being paid less than you are worth because you didn't take the time to upgrade your software. The risk is regret. The risk is looking back and realizing you played a small game when you were capable of a big one. So here is your challenge. I want you to close this video and I want you to open a blank document or a notebook. Write down one skill, just one, that would make you better at your job or open a new door. Then find one resource, a book, a YouTube playlist, a cheap course that teaches that skill. And then schedule your first 20 minutes. Not tomorrow, today. Put it on the calendar, my $500,000 appointment. Treat it with respect. Most people will watch this video, get a little hit of dopamine from the idea of being rich, and then click on a cat video. They will change nothing. And a year from now, they will be exactly where they are today, just a little bit more tired and a little bit more cynical. Don't be most people. Be the outlier. Be the one who builds the invisible asset until it becomes so visible that nobody can ignore it. Your future self is begging you to start. The clock is ticking. The asset is waiting. Go unlock it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.